Hi, friends. Around here, I go by the name of Host Eric, and this is the internet television program called Talking with Famous People. Now, tonight's live stream is titled The Topic You Most Want. And I mean that literally, specifically you, whoever you are. Whatever that topic is, I want to talk about it. Among other people's topics as well. If you have a topic you'd most like to talk about, then name that topic. Primarily, of course, I'll be talking about it, really, not you, but I'm happy to read your chats and your contributions to the conversation. Depends how quickly you type, I suppose, as to how much you can back and forth with me about the topic. You're the most famous person here. Well, you're the only person here whose name has the word olive in it. And line. You got 2 words in your name. That's 2 more words in your name than most people have in their names. Most people's names just have names in them. Eric Strauss, no words in it. There are no way to just pull a word straight out of it without mixing up the letters. Yes, well, it's whatever topic you most want. So if that's the topic you most want me to talk about, then yeah, I am. I've long thought for at least 15 seconds now that teaching crabs to use laser pointers was one of the poorer uses of time that has been suggested. The thing is, of course, if you get the crabs, there's also I. Oh yeah, that's true. It has us and it has I. Okay, true enough. You got me. I stand corrected. If you include 2-letter words, I do have, and 1-letter words, I guess I do have. I also have A in my name, so there's 3 words actually. Now, Oliver Linehan also has A in his name and I twice. I have ass in my name? No, I don't. Not directly. You have to move letters around. My anagram name is Rice Ass Rest, but I don't naturally have ass in my name. Like Oliver naturally has olive and line in his name, as well as I. But what about all those deep sea laser shows we could have? That's true. I do have the abbreviation for Australia in my name. Okay, so back to the crabs, back to the laser pointers. Pretty important stuff. I did say I was going to talk about the topic you most want to talk about, and that includes you, whoever you are. So, ourselves concerned about the lack of laser pointer usage by crabs is understandable. It's something we've all worried about plenty of times before, I'm sure. Like, hey, but are there enough laser pointer using crabs out there? You might ask yourself. The answer is probably no. But who can really tell? I guess that's the full answer. Probably no, but there's no way to verify or falsify the claim that crabs constantly use laser pointers. So I guess we'll just never know. You can't falsify a claim like that. Oh yeah, right. Like you're gonna falsify a claim like crabs constantly use laser pointers. That's impossible to falsify. You can't prove they don't. Actually, I think that's pretty easy to falsify. All you have to do is find any instance of any crab not using the laser pointer, and you will falsify it. Broccoli Todd asks me to discuss the fictional country of Spain and the island nation of Portugal. Well, interestingly, there's a connection there because the fictional nation of Spain is, in fact, a Portuguese work. It was a novel by a Portuguese writer. The title of the novel was "This Language Isn't Spanish," but it was in Portuguese. And anyway, in order to distinguish between Spanish and Portuguese, this Portuguese author, had to make up the country of Spain and the corresponding language of Spanish. And that's where Mexico came from. Okay, it is true, Legends Fall, that it's pretty difficult to falsify the claim that some crabs use laser pointers some of the time. Probably because that claim is true. I mean, you could get a crab to grab onto a laser pointer, and then that's why it'd be easy to validate that claim. Because all you have to do have one instance of a crab using a laser pointer. But if the claim is all crabs constantly use laser pointers, that's pretty easy to falsify, because the claim that not only all of them use them, but that they constantly use them, meaning is a claim that they will be using them no matter when you look at them. Which type is most likely to say or agree with the following? Life has no depth of meaning except when it is pledged for an ideal, and that there are ideals in comparison with which the life of an individual or even a people has no weight. Probably FI polar. But it could be NI. Yeah, it could be an NI thing too. The idea that it could be high NI, it could be low NI too. Like fourth slot NI can be captivated by a given notion to the detriment of themselves and everybody else. But I mean, I guess there's two elements to that, okay? The idea that the lives of individuals and even huge groups of individuals have no weight in comparison against this sort of logical calculus. That is a FI polar kind of expression. But the idea that it needs to be pledged to an ideal, that is not a high TI idea at all. So in that regard, it's like, the thing is, you could interpret it though as pledged to. Pledged to is a really, or pledged for is a really weird way to put it too. It's like Naruto is an ESFP character who's extremely pledged to the idea of his ninja way. But I think in general, ESFPs don't actually stick to any kind of word stuff consistently over time. The thing is, when you look at it historical contextually, then, because Oliver says it was written in the 1920s by some fascist in Germany. Well, I mean, in that instance, you're talking about a movement in Germany that was all about Nife, one way or the other. Like, I've typed, I typed Goering as ENFJ, Hitler as INFJ. Hitler as INFJ on meth. You got to add the math, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. But with the math, I think Hitler could be an INFJ on math, and Goering could be just an ENFJ. Goering's so clearly an ENFJ. Even as at the end of World War II, as the Allied forces are closing in on Berlin, he's in the bunker writing bullshit about Alexander the Great and stuff, and how Hitler is the same kind of leader and stuff. It's just bonkers, Like, talk about ignoring your actual experience in front of you and prioritizing narratives to the entire exclusion of actual experience and never noticing that. That's what Goering did, Cory Booker is as ENFJ as it gets. Who's Cory Booker? Is he somebody? Is that a title? Is it possibly that Cory Booker is the person who books gigs for Corey Feldman? Carly Ginn likes puppies? Well, what a weirdo liking puppies. Everybody likes puppies, Carly Jen. Liking puppies isn't something that you need to announce for us, really. Although, if that's the topic, if you're presenting to say, this is the topic I most want to talk about, the fact that I like puppies, well, then that's a different matter. Oh, thank you for the clarification there. Well, I'm glad that you're glad that I use Glad brand cling wrap. That's what you're going to think about when you're going to get killed, right? Like Alexander the Great, right? Still trying to sell his tool slot at NI bullshit. At the end of the war is all of Germany's burning around him. Hitler and his cronies are moving imaginary forces on maps and just living in NIFE town still. Just, of course, Hitler realizes what's going on a lot sooner than Goering, and he's done. Burn my body, Your mom has a puppy? Well, you know what? That puppy has a mom, too. Works both ways. It's a commutative property. I must say, Girly Jen, you're rather suspicious, to say the least. Maybe extremely suspicious. One of the things that makes me suspicious? Do I have a puppy? No. I used to have a dog, but she's dead now due to dying from death. What's the difference between an ESTJ and an ESFJ? FE Dom versus T Dom, They both, ESTJs will tell you a bunch of boring stories, but sometimes they're interesting though too, but they'll kind of, the ESTJs are there to hear themselves talk with their any third. ESFJs are too, but they are much better at hiding it. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Has to be one of the most ESTP lyrics ever. Would you agree? I would agree with that. Yes, very suspicious. Very suspicious, Carly Jen. People blame World War I on the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, but those of us in the know understand it was really puppies. I don't let little dogs have me, not even if they cry. Purify. That's hard to listen to, though. You just want to give them what they want when they do that. It's kind of a sad story. Judge Judy's an ESFJ. Yeah, I think Judge Judy's an ESTJ. I think you're right the second time. The update, correction, or whatever you want to call it. Well, once again, we're almost out of weed, ridiculously, because I smoke too much weed. Not too much, just, I guess because I don't have infinite amount of weed, which would be sufficient. An infinite amount of weed would definitely be sufficient. Is physical matter infinitely divisible? What an interesting question. Obama's an ENTP. That's my typing of Obama, and I'm standing by it. If I'm wrong, though, plausibly, I guess INFJ, but Obama's an ENTP and a disappointment to the type, frankly. Winston Churchill, also ENTP. Which of them was better? Winston Churchill, clearly, a much better leader than Obama. I don't claim Obama as an ENTP because I'm proud of it or I want him on my type team. I do it with a sigh. Unfortunately, Obama is an ENTP. Just a weak one. No, I think Pete Carroll's a particularly strong ENFJ. I think Pete Carroll is an unusually effective ENFJ. I mean, the thing is, it's like, Pete Carroll coached defense and keeps his team in the game till the very end. And I dislike Obama. No, that's fine. Our thing is fine there. He's correct. I dislike Obama. The reason I dislike Obama is because basically he took what I consider to be the more difficult and less valuable route for an ENTP, which is to say he learned to keep his mouth shut and say what people wanted to hear, and got used to out-intuiting everybody and thought he was gonna just schmooze his way through his presidency. Of course, the other thing I don't like about him is he didn't have any clear sort of understanding of why or what he wanted to do. I watched your videos and was wondering if typology is relatable to having Down syndrome. No. People with Down syndrome have personality types just like anybody else, but they probably don't. They're probably more difficult to type, I guess. Typically, Down syndrome correlates with a lack of metacognition. Well, he was weak. Sounds like I'm more disappointed in Obama. Well, sure. It's like anytime a president fails, I'm mostly disappointed because, oh, I know Leaf Drummer. I'm not being dragged along obliviously behind. Okay. I didn't say that. Would I give a typing to a person with Down syndrome? Yeah, I don't see why not. They want to pay for it. I mean, the thing is, if they're a person with Down syndrome who wants personality type stuff, that tends to suggest more metacognition than people with Down syndrome are capable of usually, which is really the definitive distinction drawing consideration. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Oliver Linehan spotted it, and this is something that I spotted as well. Obama's cadence in his speech is somewhat similar to mine. It's true. He talks like an NETI person. And the thing is, he was even no, metacognition is something that even ESFPs have, or I would think even ESFPs have some of it. You know, it's like the capacity to reflect on one's own thinking, right? So no, I would not give a charitable typing because that would be, in my opinion, in some sense, demeaning. But hi, Midnight Blue. So the thing is, Leaf Trimmer is I kind of enjoy the different challenges that trolls come in and present when they think they're still like fooling me or something, you know. And this is because the problem is if they're being legitimate, there's legitimate responses to everything, and so and it's got to be frustrating that I have totally legitimate responses to everything. Just a random theory: could it be a learned behavior to come across as a thoughtful, debater presenter? Talking about the cadences. No, I don't think so because it's the way it's the way that he uses FE tonally. To me, feels like third slot FE kind of. The How can it be that some Americans are enjoying great prosperity while other Americans are suffering and searching for how could that be? You know, it's like it's the beat pattern of NETI as you think of the next thing, you know? Why would it be demeaning? It would be demeaning because it would be, well, in this instance, the individual was asking for charity directly, potentially, in which case, then I would say no. If they were going to argue that they needed a charitable typing, they would be more successful arguing financial need than some ontological state, right? Well, The thing that's the difference between the ESTP and ENTP expression of it is the amount of words more than it is the cadence exactly, and the tendency to finish off in a big rush. So it's like typically you get some sort of idea that you're trying to express. There's a little pause before you start. You start to express it, and then if it's a fairly complicated idea, then you'll get the end part of it as a big chunk, and then say the end part of it all stretched out. So, Tom Jacobson says that he would link cadence to process result dichotomy in socionomics. Well, the thing about the process result dichotomy is it basically links to actual judgers and actual perceivers straight up. So to be a perceiver is to say that you are a process-oriented person, and to be a judger is to say that you are a outcome-oriented person. So in that sense, the dichotomy is probably the best dichotomy of the varying non-mechanical dichotomies that socionics makes, because socionics has slews of non-mechanical dichotomies, which are just descriptive. They're just they're not providing us meaningful information, and can in fact be providing us misleading information usually. But the process result links to judging, perceiving pretty right on the money. It's funny watching you describe the way you talk, as you talk the way you describe. Listen, Carly Jen, I have some advice for you. Don't put crayons up your nose. Isn't that good advice? See what a caring person I am? You might poke your brain out. You don't want to poke your brain out, do you? Cedric Beachy, you expressed my frustration with Obama more successfully than I've expressed my frustration for Obama. He felt way too adaptable to me. Like if you're not grounded in something that gives you some sort of like moral directionality / humility. In other words, I think it's for ENTPs, a broad frame humility is difficult to attain and the most important thing to attain. And what I mean by broad frame is it helps for an ENTP to ascribe a lot of stuff to an external, like God, basically, because it produces the habit of recognizing that you have to know things sometimes. You can't always do things. My instinct is to, if something's gone wrong or some trouble or some distress or whatever, is to do something, either by saying words or by actually doing something. But behind that is a false assumption that my agency is more effective than it is. In other words, when things come together, they come together lost my train of thought. Reading leaf tremors. Chicks. Chicks want. Again, chicks don't want. Individual human beings are chicks, and individual human beings want things. And those two statements are both true. Andre Z. Hey, Eric, says Andre Z. Hey, Andre Z. I lost my train of thought again mid-sentence, and I was saying something interesting too, but I forgot what it was now. Yeah, it was like he was playing to an offense rather than trying to share understanding. I couldn't stand it. His solutions to one problem didn't even make any sense. Oh. Okay. As I get pelted with paintballs. Every time I make a mistake like that, it's like, boop, 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 I get pow, 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 pow. Okay. So I'm having tea instead of coffee. Isn't that interesting? I don't almost never do I drink tea. Well, I am a man of action, and it is also true that I don't like it when people complain without seeking a solution, at least, not necessarily offering one. But it is the case that what I said, namely that I'm a man of action, meaning I presume falsely that I don't need to know more. Now, granted, the older I've gotten, the less falsely I presume that. The less frequently I presume that falsely. Actually, I was the one getting hit by paintballs? Oh, I hit you with paintballs. Oh, no. Those were love pats. I got hit with paintballs. You just got love pats from me. Well, I was gonna make coffee tea today, which is you make tea in the coffee pot, and then you pour that tea back into the water thing, and you pour that and make it go over coffee, But oh yeah. I mean, it's a tough act to sustain in part because I was in special ed for a number of years, so I was a teacher in special ed, so I actually know I know I am too familiar with the population. Bjork's favorite Bjord is Bjork's. It probably is pretty shitty, whatever that thing is. If it's Bjork's favorite, I'm sure it's not very good. Where are the Irish gals? I think you mean Scottish. Okay, the trimmer. You need to trim the leaves off your Ireland wrongness and shape it into a bush shaped like Scotland. You're in special ed too, or maybe we're the same teacher. Yeah. Hilarious. Yeah, I don't want to just be a sounding board. That's for sure. So I think FI sometimes wants that from others, is to commiserate, It's like, hey, I'm feeling sad. Oh, why are you feeling sad? Well, you know, Cedric Beachy says, Eric, what do you think made Trump or Obama or Bush want to be president? Bush, opportunity. Obama, opportunity. Trump. I don't think Trump even really wanted to win when he ran. I don't think he knew why he wanted to do it. He just knew he wanted to for whatever reason. It just feels like you want to cry a lot for me. Carly Jen asks, what's my type, Eric? Cloud? Bush was groomed for it, yeah. The thing is, I have good reason to be president. I have an agenda that's not an agenda, but I have clarity. But I don't think Obama ever had clarity. He thought he could just figure it out as he went along. And, Carly Jen, when I'm asked to type somebody in the chat, I just have to randomly guess. Because I don't know who they are. FI at times wants you to soak up and wallow in their emotions with them. It validates the offense they feel. Does it with good emotions too. Cedric Beachy says, I might cry for other people. But he always remembers the admonition. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Eric, sometimes I wonder if I'm severely mentally retarded, but that everyone else tries to give me a normal life by pretending I'm not. I'm too mentally impaired to see that. I used to think that when I was a little kid. Like when I was maybe from 10 to age 15 or something, I had this, maybe it was younger than that. I'm not sure exactly what age it was, but I had this lurking suspicion that I was secretly mentally retarded and my parents were hiring my friends to hang out with me. No, you cannot come to my house. I predicted 2016. I predicted the cheating in 2020. And now I'm predicting that Trump is much smarter than you're giving him credit for, and he ain't going out like no punk. Okay, well, you correctly predicted that he would be elected in 2016. You incorrectly predicted cheating in 2020. I've yet to see a single piece of actual evidence of cheating. Just evidence of how cheating could have occurred. Additionally, there's shit tons of reasons to suspect that no cheating did occur, since the result was consistent with a president who is wildly, almost unabashedly embraced by a small segment, considered a lesser of two evils by another segment. And, it's like, it's not, there's nothing that suggests foul play, right? There's no reason to even consider it, really, because it's so there isn't any good reason to suggest it happened. Okay, so give me one piece of evidence, Legends Fall. I've asked everybody who said this for a piece of evidence as to cheating occurring. I've yet to hear one. Carly Jen, there's something called the euphemism treadmill. I'm glad this gives me an opportunity to talk about it, because when I first started working in the field of special ed, no, just tell me a link. Fine, I'll make you a mod to post a link. That's fine. I'm not objecting to making you a mod to post a link. I'm objecting to me having to look at a link and read some evidence or something. Just tell me the warrant. It's not that difficult. Something like in Indiana, there was a county where 100% of the votes went to Biden, even though polling showed 40% support for Biden. Something like that. The warrant. Give me the actual argument. It shouldn't take any longer than that to give me the warrant. If you have real evidence, if you have a good reason to believe what you're saying, it shouldn't take any longer than that to give me a piece of evidence. It's fourth slot NI. It's weak compared to fifth slot. It's weird. It's like my SI is weak compared to ESTP's SI. It's like, I'm convinced that the only way that Legends Fall wouldn't have believed there was cheating is if Trump won or if Trump was defeated and didn't pull any ESFP bullshit, which is never going to happen. Which was never even a possibility of happening. Okay, so look at this. This is interesting. So, talking points. The Chinese systematically gained control over our election system, constituting a national security emergency. The electronic voting machines were comprised and cannot be trusted to provide an accurate vote count. To restore confidence, the failsafe of counting the paper ballots must be used to determine who won the election. For president, senators, congressional representatives, hand counts reported by the media are not really hand counts and easily subverted. Note, nothing here is evidence. They're not even claiming to have any evidence of cheating on behalf of one side. They're saying we can't trust this vote for various reasons. This is not evidence of any sort of systematic cheating. So let's say the Chinese did hack the system and break into our voting machines. That's not evidence that they sided with Biden. Those are the talking points. I looked at the other thing. It's a bunch of the same sort of thing. Here's a bunch of ways in which some of the election results are not legitimate. But that there's nothing there that says that we have reason to believe it's illegitimate in favor of Biden. I mean, I looked at the outline too, the dead voters, voter fraud, voter roll fraud, blah, 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 all this kind of shit, right? None of that is evidence of Biden cheating or cheating helping Biden. That's evidence of bad electioneering, perhaps. That's evidence that interference made this election illegitimate in some way. But that's not evidence that Biden cheated, that Trump was cheated out of his rightful presidency. Do you understand the difference between the two things? One comprises evidence of the claim you're making, the other does not. And the thing is, these things are objectively so. It's like, this supposedly looks suspicious. This happens all the fucking time. Every election where all of a sudden results shift from 40% to 56%. It happens all the time because they don't update continually in real time. Backdated Biden mail-in ballots. Backdated. So this is making a clear case. This supposed congressional electoral fraud briefing, which is not was not in any way, shape, or form ever presented to Congress as you can see by how it's done. It's clearly an agenda-based article that is attempting to prove that that Trump actually won. So, for example, it's making a specific claim that there's a fix in for Trump. Fixing in Arizona, where it shows number of votes processed and at the time at which they processed plus 143,000 votes Biden injection. So what is an injection? A spike means that a large number of votes were injected into the totals. By whom? Well, here's how the process works, right? Here's how it's done. And then they describe a way in which, in theory, you could flowchart a means to subvert an election, okay? Not evidence at all that it actually was done. Do you understand how critical this is? In this flowchart, which purports to claim where and how it's done, high-level view of voting system and networks, it's not claiming any of this was done. Okay? It's just drawing NI connections between things. So you should really, when you see this kind of shit, where they're not actually proving the point they're claiming, you should be very, very, very suspicious that it's agenda-based. That's definitely agenda-based. Carly Jen, look, stop. Okay? Cloud, do something else with your life. You're saying that the election unfairly selected Biden over Trump, right? And then you show statistics about how Biden closed the gap and or surpassed Trump over the course of time as mail-in ballots were counted and stuff. Note that there are no contraindicative examples in that article. So those should be contextualized against states where that didn't occur or states where the opposite occurred. If it's not contextualized thusly, it's agenda-based. And you should dismiss it out of hand because it doesn't even matter. It's like, as soon as I see the fact that they're not trying to police themselves argumentationally, why do I want to do the work of policing them? The thing starts off with bad arguments and ends with bad arguments and nothing but bad arguments in between. It's not proof of anything. It's a lot of fancy looking shit, though, I'll tell you that. And if you got weak fourth slot NI, you might buy into it. But there are no real arguments there. Right. Proving that a thing could have been done is not proof that it was done. That's not a court case, Legends Fall. That's some dude who, like you, really wants that to be the case and is making the best case he can for it, which is not a very good case. That's not any kind of congressional report. Nobody wrote that to Congress. They would have punctuated their fucking bullet points. I mean, Legends Fall, for you to claim that there are overwhelming statistical anomalies, you would have had to seek out an article that contextualized those lines that separate and then get closer together, right? They contextualize them with other states where it doesn't happen or where the opposite happened. And you're not even interested in that. You're not even interested in finding out if that data is meaningful. That guy certainly isn't interested in finding out if that data is meaningful. I mean, that's the thing. I will always sit here on the side and go, you will occasionally catch a rabbit, but that's a terrible way to feed yourself. Cedric Beachy. I mean, but why are you assuming it wasn't in favor of Trump? Why are you do you trust Trump so much that he wouldn't cheat to win the election? I mean, the guy won the election last time and still claimed that the other side cheated. Think about this. Trump won the election last time, still claimed that other people cheated, ignored reality and truth, and insisted that he won the popular vote as well, then claimed 1 million people or something were at his inauguration when it was factually false and easily verifiably false. He has a serious problem with describable reality, because describable reality is described in words, and he doesn't know how words work. So the idea that Trump is getting cheated is a phantasm of Trump's imagination and something that he's sold to people with bad NI, either too much or too little. You know, the thing is, Legends Fall, your TI is good enough that now that I've informed you, like, okay, you got to be on the lookout for this, that people with agendas will attempt to let you fill in the gaps with your NI, and you'll be inclined to do so. Instead, be adversarial with your TI, make them do the actual work before you believe anything. You know, it's like that's what it boils down to. The problem here, Legends Fall, is you aren't making people do their work they have to do before you believe them. It's like nobody. I try to make sure that nobody slips any bad arguments past me, and that takes a little bit of like knowing the criteria that they need to meet in order to be justified in making the claim that they're making. If they don't seem to care whether they're actually justifying the claim they're making or some other claim, if they're not making the link clearly as to why this justifies the actual claim they're making, if they're not operationalizing definitions so that you can see yourself very easily both sides of the thing, then they're not addressing it objectively anyway. So it's like, if that were a serious attempt to articulate things, it would address both sides of the issue. Serious thinkers don't have a position they're trying to prove. They determine their position through their thinking and proving of things. Nobody's pushing anything under the rug, leaf trimmer. I mean, sort of, I guess. I guess you could say people don't want to hassle with it right now. But the fact is, if you genuinely think that there's good evidence that cheating occurred in this election, then you are not doing a good job of managing your claims. If you genuinely think that the election was illegitimate because the vote was so flawed that that it needs a redo, then you're doing a less poor job of managing your claims, but still a rather poor job of it. If you say it seems quite possible that fraud could have occurred and us not be able to determinedly answer the question of whether it did, and thus we need to fix some election problems, And it makes me feel less secure that this is a legitimate result, then you're doing a good job of managing your claims. I mean, I changed my position, Jackie N. If somebody had good proof that cheating occurred, my position would be that cheating had occurred. I don't cling to wrong positions. I don't like wrong positions. Just like originally, my response to whether it was natural or man-made was, it doesn't matter, we're talking about the wrong thing. Eventually, I got around to addressing the question. Somebody said they thought it was lab-made. And my initial thought was, everything I've read, that's bullshit. It was definitely natural-made. But I researched it. And in fact, what I discovered is, we'll never know, but it seems like the preponderance of the evidence is suggested it's more likely that it's lab-made than man-made. I mean, than nature-made, okay? In part because the closest corollary we can find in nature is 96%, which is very distant from this virus. So, and in other things where we have a natural cause for a virus, they're able to identify the animal species where, and in fact, the specific instances sometimes where the transfer of the disease happened. They've not been able to identify an animal species that associates with this particular virus. Like with SARS, one of them was the camels. One of them it was, what are they called? Some kind of monkey, rhesus monkeys. One of them was something else. I don't know. They can identify the animal species where the transfer went over, but they can't find that for this at all. So that's a good reason to think, okay, this is more. This is definitely falls into the class of decent possibilities, probably more likely. They were working on viruses like that in the area. There's lots of other reasons, as I articulated in a video recently, why the correct conclusion about it is we don't know, but more likely than not, it's man-made, and we probably will never know. Now, the correct answer regarding this election is we don't know for sure that there was no cheating going on, but the results are consistent with general expectations, considering the majority of the population disliked Trump more than they disliked Biden. If you were to have polled the population on any given day on that question, it would be a no-brainer. That the amount of people actively disliking Biden is much smaller than the amount of people actively disliking Trump. So the thing is, of course, that's not the same question as who do you want to be president. And I agree that Biden's dementia made it a much closer race than it otherwise would have been. But except for Biden's dementia, it would have been not close at all, because Trump just simply didn't have the quantitative support in the country. I mean, you could disagree with that about whether or not Trump had the numbers, but you'd be lying to yourself. I mean, it's like, you got to remember, most of the population centers, the urban areas, Los Angeles, San Francisco, California, the whole West Coast, the whole East Coast, they all despise the man. These states go steadily straight blue, but beyond that, it's like there's a particular hatred for this individual, not just amongst leftists. I despise the guy. I'm not a leftist. Leaf trimmer. So, okay, if you're relying on things like that, you know you're not thinking well. So Leaf Trimmers posited that in order for his claim to still be true, probably a lot of people really, really like Trump, but just are afraid to say it because it's not PC. Okay, so now you're explaining away legitimate data with your plausible but totally speculative suggestions. That's not good thinking. That's not how you make decisions about what's true. You go, oh, Eric's making a good point here. In fact, the demographics are such that it almost certainly would be much stranger if Biden had lost the popular vote, let's just say, than if he had won it. Even Hillary Clinton, one of the least likable candidates, one of the least qualified and the least likable candidates in the history of American politics, won the popular vote over Donald Trump. Why? Because Trump is extremely divisive. No, leaf trimmer. It's not that media is biased against Trump. It's that Trump's extremely divisive. Why don't I like him? Because he has no respect for the institutions of democracy, and he has no respect for the truth or words. So, in other words, when this is an example I used earlier, he was correct about COVID being, our response to it needed to be a lot more measured right out the gate. He was correct about that. But he didn't say why he was correct about that. Now, what did that do? He's supposed to be on the team of the correct side because he's actually correct about his position on it, more or less. That, at the very least, that we should have a less drastic, not more drastic response to this, okay? Instead, he said it was just a hunch. Then he'd go back and forth. And what he did was, instead of helping by having the correct position, he hurt by having the wrong reasons. He gave everybody a good reason to not think that what he was saying was worth anything. That if it was his position, it was poorly thought out, poorly reasoned, and not something anybody should get behind. If you can't justify to me why you're right, then you're not right. If you are inconsistent with your justifications across frames of reference. I heard him on one occasion justify something because, well, the thing he was opposing didn't have a limiting principle. Well, that's true. That's true. Says the fucking walking incarnation of somebody who shits on limiting principles every minute of every day. Illegally assassinating an Iranian general, thereby enabling them to make the argument when they assassinate American diplomats and officials that turnabout's fair play. There's one huge fuck up. It's just the first thing that comes to my mind. Or did you favor that assassinating that Iranian general? Did you favor contravening all of history's convention and having the American government purposefully, willfully, and openly assassinate another country's, public official? I already told you, I'm not happy with Obama at all. It's like, leaf trimmer, my critique of Trump is not answerable by a critique of Obama. I'm not defending Obama, and we're not arguing who's better, Trump or Obama. You asked me to present you an example of a policy that I didn't like, disapproved of, and thought was terrible. And I gave you a concrete example of a very specific policy decision he made that turned him from a human being into a war criminal. All this extra legal killing the United States is doing, which began under Bush, persisted under Obama, and has persisted still under Trump, will end under a Strauss administration. There will be no extra legal killing. Why? Because I actually do operate according to some limiting fucking principles. Because I'm actually qualified to be president. I'm actually a person of character. Not a murderer who doesn't even realize he's a murderer because he doesn't understand that words matter. And it's like, if your mindset is that's not enough, then I don't know what else could be enough. He turned the U.S. military, not even the intelligence agencies, into an international criminal organization when he assassinated that Iranian general. Leaving the Paris Accords is a fine thing to do. The economy was, I mean, it's like I don't typically consider that a policy of his, right? So leaving the Paris Accord is an example of a policy of his. Economy made better is not an example of a policy of his. Lower drug trafficking, not an example of a policy of his. Many gangs obliterated, not an example of a policy of his. Note, of course, that to the extent that So, okay, when you say MS-13 was handled by Trump, I am familiar with MS-13. What was Trump's policy that successfully disabled that? I just sent you something on your Talking with Famous People page. I may have just given you another show. I don't know what that means. You mean on Facebook? Is that what you're talking about? I never go on Facebook. When I go on Facebook, I go, ugh. I don't want to look at all these things. Did you send me a message or what? My page. Inbox. Huh. Well, Jack Green, Winston's mom also will express instances of similar kind of phenomena, making predictions and stuff. It seems to correlate somewhat with NI and why did he assassinate an Iranian general? There are protocols by which you kill people. So, in other words, I'm not saying the United States government is never justified in killing people. I am saying that If we are at war with the country, let's declare war on them. If we're not, we shouldn't be firing live ammunition at them. Do I play poker? I'm terrible at poker. I do play poker sometimes. It's basically what I call a firefighter of mine. If I'm feeling either like mad, like I used to go play poker when I was with Kimberly more frequently because she pissed me off, and I'd just be like, "Fuck off! I'm going to play poker." I know I'd go down there. I know I was going to lose money. I always would lose. So, like one time I won or something. And lose $100 or whatever. Sometimes I buy in at the. Well, look, I may be talking to quote unquote hype men. I'm not going to get good arguments out of them. But my point is, I answered a question, which was name a bad policy by Trump. And I named one. As to why it's a bad policy, it's like saying, well, why is murder bad? What was the justification that the United States had for killing that person? What was the legal justification? Not Trump's justification, the legal justification. Yeah, I know he wasn't in his own country, which enabled us to assassinate him without violating Iranian airspace. That doesn't make it better. That makes it more effective. What do you mean ENTPs ignore stuff they can't refute? What am I ignoring? I don't ignore stuff that I can't refute. Tell me what I'm ignoring. I probably just genuinely missed it. He prevented a war with North Korea? I mean, he did a lot of saber rattling with North Korea. But why do you think that there was going to be a war with North Korea prior to him saber rattling? I saw the image in the message. I read the whole thing. Oh, I see. That's from. Oh, I see. I actually, you cut off the date, but I can kind of see it. I see that. That's your post from February, predicting that Biden would win, even though she liked Bernard Sanders. I don't know. It doesn't say the year. Anyway. Okay. So yeah, it's like preventing a war is a hard thing to establish, right? He did some saber rattling, and it didn't result in war. Those speculative things that some other president it would have resulted in war are just speculative things. Putin's a nightmare. I don't know. It's like So my example of bad policy wasn't satisfactory. Okay, you're asking for policy decisions. Again, remember, what's more important, genuinely, is how we talk about things than what we do, okay? Because you'll notice that there wasn't a collective decision to overreact to COVID. It was everybody one after another dominoing into this err on the side of caution paradigm, because nobody had addressed the paradigm issue at the outset and made that the subject of conversation. The whole world looks different today, dramatically better, if I were president when COVID breaks out. Dramatically better. Because now the thinking people have a meta. This is what I'm talking about. Analysts need to listen to meta-analysts. Analysts cannot trust their own judgment regarding their analysis. They can check, not regarding their analysis, regarding the frame. So they have a universal frame, and then they're using that framing of things to apply their particularist tool function in some particularist way, right? The problem is they need to listen to the meta-analysts who understand things better, because we understand it through a larger frame. And they need to check, So it's like you're convinced that the policies are the thing that matter most. And certainly policies matter. But here we are, embattled so much, so highly polarized, that you are battling me over whether or not it's appropriate for me to hate Trump or think he's a terrible president. And you're insisting the media is to blame, and you're insisting, the things you're saying are crazy. It's like, if you say the media is to blame for my positions on Trump, you're insane. The media hates Trump for many of the same reasons I do, because the media is comprised of a bunch of individuals, each of whom is independently hating Trump for a variety of reasons. Trump is not going to serve a second term. Well, right. See, Lee Trimmer, that's what I'm saying. The media is not to blame. Trump is to blame. Because the buck stops at the president. It doesn't matter if everybody else is too dumb. The president has to be smart enough. So in other words, the president has to be smart enough to realize both what the proper response is, but more importantly, how to frame it, because everything thereafter follows in that frame. So here you guys are being frame walked down to the end of Insanity Pier by Trump. There's no reason to believe he was cheated out of this election. None. If you have to have anybody have asked for an actual reason, provide me one. And what Legends Fall gave me was the best fake evidence I've seen. The best fake evidence. But it's not evidence of the thing you claim it's evidence of. And yet still, you persist in claiming it. That's what's wrong. We need to understand before we claim, not after. Biden clearly won the election, is going to be the president in a month, and there's nothing's going to change that. That's how it is. Lee Trimmer, What is this you are watching? Media. Am I representing somebody else's agenda? How about anybody on YouTube? Do you think anybody on YouTube is in cahoots with some secret media overlord? It's not even claiming circumstantial by and large. I mean, it claims circumstantial. It doesn't even establish circumstantial. It establishes circumstantial evidence or evidence to think that we don't have good enough reason to trust. In other words, showing something is fallacious is not a reason to believe it's wrong. It's a reason to believe we aren't justified in agreeing with it. I see. So let's see. The top 6 corporations control all the media. Why was well? Sure, but I've explained this, Legends Fall. You don't know what those mean without contextualizing it with the counterexamples. Then you could know what it means. So if you only point to a couple of states and show the lines look like this here in this state, but don't compare it against the other states to show how it deviates from a norm, then you're not doing any work. You're just trying to prove yourself right, not trying to actually be right. Now, these top 6 media corporations. Leaf Trimmer, I want you to think for a minute about you and me both and the media that we consume. So, what I've consumed lately, I did just finish consuming before starting this live stream a movie called Olympus Had Fallen. No, I'm not playing Just Look It Up, Leaf Trimmer. No. See, this is the thing. Right people are able to explain why they're right about a single point in question very easily. If it's a precise point, you know? I am not going to do your work for you. Okay, yes. Legends Fall. See, this is forethought in I. Correct. Deviation from the expected norm, but not compared against the other states. Why is it not compared against the other states? That would be the smart way to do it. Right? I mean, after all of this time, so far, nobody, I've asked about this, has ever been able to give me a good single sentence explanation as to where there's proof that cheating occurred. So if you want to construct a circumstantial case and cherry pick the data, you will be able to construct just as strong a circumstantial case in favor of cheating for Biden. I know they do, and I understand certain states are battleground states, and that makes it more plausible to cheat the U.S. election than other elections. That's true. But that's not proof that there's any cheating. The mechanism provided in that flowchart is not a mechanism that explains anything. It assumes varying entities have varying interests, and that somehow those interests become reality. That is not a flowchart of a good thinker. Did you look at the flowchart? Did you see it? His explanation for the mechanism of how it occurs? No, I did click on it. I'm still looking. The thing is, what I'm saying is, once again, I've been proved right. That if somebody can't explain it to me in fairly straightforward fashion right away, then probably they're full of shit. You know, it's like, it's not always the case. There are some things that are too complicated to explain. And that's what that this is what makes me so furious about that document, is that flowchart is what you'd call too complicated to explain theater. It doesn't actually explain anything, but it looks like a complicated explanation of something. When you see that flowchart, you know no good thinker did this work. For sure. For sure, no good thinker did this work. Let's go over the flowchart. So, where and how it's done. High-level view of voting systems networks. So then we've got bullshit thing. Go away. So malicious. So it starts with other malicious actors access this. An arrow pointing to AWS Cloud server in Frankfurt. And then there's another line that says changes in cloud can be uploaded backwards because a harvester called QS Snatch grabs all counties' credentials. And so that line goes from AS Cloud to central counting, poll books, voter rolls, databases, tabulation software, reporting software, unofficial database, official database. Voting place. Then there's an error going into voting place, an error in the voting place that causes this to occur, namely bad SIGs, bad formats, bad QR codes. And then it talks about the voting software companies and their relationship to various organizations, and concludes from it, or states anyway, little or no security here with old published passwords, etc. Pointing to the companies that make the voting software stuff. And then it says, adjudicated the air gap myth. Official database, it says it has an air gap myth, the blue line, to the Secretary of State. Now, regular adjudication goes through Clarity, SCYTL, GCR, VR Systems, Aircan, Edison Res, Associated Press, Decision Desk, then to the media. So there are all these people who can mess with the data between when it leaves the voting place and when it's reported on. Accordingly, that's from the unofficial database. Now, there's an official database that supposedly has an air gap myth that bypasses all that and goes directly to the Secretary of State. The issue, national security. Okay, well, so this flowchart is incredibly stupid because it relies on a couple of assumptions. Number one, that these voting companies and mid-level COs and other things that are involved with the unofficial database are either willfully being totally incompetent or are just totally incompetent. Okay? There's no evidence that these are old published passwords, etc., but it makes the claim. And again, this is for the unofficial database only. Now, adjudicated ballots, which is a regular adjudication from the unofficial database, are totally at the whim of the operator or malicious actor. Why? How are they totally at the whim of? Massive number of ballots were routed here to regular adjudication. They can be sent off-site, downloaded to Excel spreadsheets, manipulated, and then re-uploaded into the system. Audit logs for Antrim MI had been deleted, as had audit logs for any files sent or received by the system. Okay, so this says how it is possible to purportedly cheat the vote. And the reason is because security is weak. There are bad SIGs, bad formats, bad QR codes in the voting machines. And changes in cloud can be uploaded backwards because the harvester called QSnatch grabs all the county's credentials. Okay. So this guy's figured out a way that in theory he could, or anybody else could, cheat some voting machines. But if you were to actually try to do this, you discover that you ran afoul of, foremost, figuring out how to actually get Q snatch backwards uploaded to where you want it. You then have to figure out how to get what all the bad SIGs, bad formats, and bad QR codes are, and how to exploit them. You then have to have a conspiracy amongst individuals in the media to all manipulate data in the same fashion, which is crazy. Now it says, oh, no, that's not so crazy because it goes through Edison, Res, Associated Press, and Decision Desk headquarters first before it goes out into the media. Well, the thing is, of course, there are lots of people reporting on election results. You don't have to go through the Associated Press to get election results. If I wanted to report on election results here in my voting district, I could go down to the voting facilities and engage with those individuals myself, in person. Now, the thing is, keeping in mind that different states and even different localities have different kinds of voting machines, and that this thing assumes a conspiracy to cooperatively engage in fixing the numbers, and or a conspiracy of silence from the reporters who send in real numbers and get silenced by Associated Press. So it assumes either that or that and weak passwords and stuff. Note that these are two different ways of gaming the election. So to game the election by having the media lie for you is one way. To game the election by actually cheating the election machines is another way. Note, you don't have to get the media to lie for you if you've successfully cheated the voting machines. Now, what this says here is that the official database with an air gap myth that goes directly to the Secretary of State is in fact a myth, I guess. Why is it a myth? Key issue. China has leveraged financial, non-governmental, and foreign allies, including Venezuela, to acquire influence and control of U.S. voting infrastructure in at least 28 states. Critical infrastructure control utilized as part of an ongoing globalist socialist operation to subvert the will of the United States voters and install a China ally. Okay, so note what we can do with this immediately. Oh, you think motive, your link story is proof. A link story is not proof of anything. I mean, it's terrible, terrible thinking to say, I've concluded that this agenda exists, and therefore I'm going to put everything through that frame. And that because Biden's, why did the Chinese cheat to get Biden? Well, because he's more China friendly. I mean, is he really? Russia cheating to help Trump win, that makes sense because Trump's been incredibly disruptive, as is evidenced by this conversation right here. We no longer believe in our system of democracy. I hope to change that, but a foreign power helping Trump to win or helping Trump to win again makes sense. It does not make sense to help Biden to win. I mean, Putin wanting Trump to win makes perfect sense. It was incredibly destructive to the institutions of a civil society and the free world and democracy in general. Because he again, as we expressed before, if you don't have the right reasons and you don't think it matters, then you're not an egalitarian, democratically minded person. You just are an authoritarian. You know? Yeah, I mean, lab made but accidental release is the most likely scenario from my understanding of it. And we'll never be able to prove it, and it doesn't really matter. But what does matter, what does matter is how the media is reporting that. And note, again, what we see in the media is not lying. It's everybody sort of parroting each other's bad arguments until somebody finally makes the good argument, you know? Okay, so Richard Moan. Again, if it were in fact the case that Biden cheated, then if it is the case that Biden cheated, or that there was cheating to help Biden, it was done incredibly well, because nobody who's made that claim has yet given me any piece of evidence that supports the claim. No, none at all. There's no evidence for it at all. And the thing is, what's important to remember is that I am not saying Biden's a great choice. I'm not saying even that I prefer Biden over Trump. I'm just saying that reasonable people don't think crazy shit like Trump cheated, that Biden must have cheated to win this election, when all the demographics and all the numbers suggest this was probably the most likely outcome to occur. I mean, certainly it's the case that plenty of people despise the man. So, it's like, I mean, I made it clear I wasn't going to vote for Biden on the grounds that he had dementia. I mean, Trump won in 2016 and lost the popular vote. Okay. Okay. So if you can't use polling, why weren't you arguing in 2016 that Trump cheated? Legends fall. Okay, so those reasons are not reasons to believe anything, okay? Those are your crazy NI nonsense conclusions, Richard Moan. It is easier to manipulate a weak-minded leader, and that would be a reason to cheat to get Biden into office. But that's not a reason to believe that Biden did cheat to get into office, or that anything cheated on behalf of Biden to get him into office. So we're talking about you thinking very badly and me thinking, well, I want to move you closer over to this direction where you're not thinking so badly anymore. I'm blaming it on very bad NI. It's not good NI, obviously, because it's NI that's saying what matters is what I feel about people's motivations, not actual justifications. You're awake, you're woke, huh? Well, you certainly are woke to the idea of believing things for NI reasons that are not justified adequately by a TI deliberation. That's true. And, any sort of meaningful calculus of the thing says you're letting your FI make the decision here. You think that because you really wanted Trump to win, and because other people really wanted him to lose, they must have cheated or something. It's crazy. You should not decide whether or not he cheated, whether or not any cheating occurred, until, without any calculation of motivation, you establish actual evidence of cheating. Then you can say, okay, who's most likely to have done this? And you can come up with the motivation. If you think badly, you come up with the motivation first, and then you say, this justifies my conclusion that it was done. You know? Okay, again, those aren't words that mean anything or matter. Those are dumb words. Richard Rowan, if you're going to say there's a higher power, our presidents are puppets, and Biden is more weak minded and easier to determine as a leader because he will listen to the higher elite more than Trump, those aren't words that mean things. This is called page 1 of how to sound like an idiot. So if you just don't, it's like you don't have to like the opposition. You may think they have an agenda that fundamentally plays out as evil, even. But that doesn't mean they cheated. Leaf trimmer. So the fuck what? What media have I watched today? I watched one major Hollywood film called Olympus Has Fallen. I watched a bunch of different anime, including the strangest thing I've ever seen, which was, well, maybe not the strangest thing I've ever seen, but quite strange. This weird show about this guy who finds a merman by a river and has him live in his bathtub. It's a really weird anime. But I watched a bunch of different other anime shows that I pushed random and played around looking and seeing what was out there, you know. What else did I do? I live streamed. I'm engaging with all of you directly about these ideas, citizen to citizen. I'm not representing any agenda at all, yet here I am telling you the same thing the mainstream media is telling you. And the other thing to remember is 2 weeks ago, I was saying the mainstream media is lying to you when they say this man-made thing is a myth. So, you know, I'm not siding with them or against them. I'm siding with what's correct. Yeah, well, the difference between what I'm doing and what they're doing is this. I'm directly addressing what they're saying and saying, don't make claims you can't sustain. And they're saying, you're lying to yourself. It's like, I'm not even negating any of your large picture things that are going on. I'm saying, if you want to claim cheating occurred, you can't prove it that way. Richard Moen happened to thinking. He's like, what's this, toilet paper? You're claiming that Trump will serve another. Well, that's a prediction, not a claim. That's different, okay? Being wrong in predictions is fine. Because you don't have to sustain predictions. You just say, well, this is what I'm predicting. We'll see what happens, you know? You don't, predictions are subject to argumentational scrutiny only when they're used to justify other things. So, so the election wasn't stolen, Richard Moen? Isn't that how you came in saying it was stolen? They want him to win because he doesn't question higher power to take over everyone with the New World Order. Who is they? I can't understand. I won't understand. You mean you can't justify it and you won't justify it. Therefore, no one should take you seriously. The higher elite. Okay. Good night, everybody. Talk to you later. leaf trimmer, this is the difference between me and you and Richard Moen. My intuition is good. So I had an intuitive good reason to believe initially that smelled fishy. So I investigated it, and indeed it was fishy. I've done enough tertiary investigation of this to know there's nothing fishy smelling here. So there's no reason to do a bunch of investigation. If I were to do an investigation, it would summarily end up like this. Here's why, if you are claiming that that Trump was cheated in this election, you are not using reason to draw that conclusion. I listen to big tech and corporate media? According to whom? What makes you think I listen to corporate media? I mean, like, what corporate media do you think I listen to? You listen to big tech and corporate media? Your mouth, you said? I said I listen to big tech and corporate media? I didn't say that. The thing is, I understand all media to be examples of things that I can access and critique on independently. I don't read things and believe them and then try to understand why they're true. I read things and see if they, and I always note when things are making unsubstantiated claims. When people make unsubstantiated claims, I will, it'll trigger an intuitive thing like, okay, wait, this is not substantiated. So it's like, what triggers that about this election? People claiming that it was cheated. That triggers my intuition that says, hold on a second, these people aren't making claims they can support or substantiating at all. So then I go investigate to make sure, and I do all the deliberative work necessary. But in this case, it's not even, it's like Legends Fall is really committed to the idea. He's a TI tool user, and the best he can come up with is the best piece of fake evidence I've seen. It's still really not good evidence at all. It's not evidence of anything. It's poorly done. It's based on the same sort of thing that Richard Moen is arguing about here. These sort of like new world order shit, and China being wanting this and doing this. It doesn't matter what China wants. That's not proof that they did anything. You're waiting for Eric to start calling you wicked. Richard Moen, as I've explained before, I'm somebody who researches for a living. And I'm somebody who critiques claims and arguments for a living. And I know for a fact that I've done vastly more research on election machines than you have. I guarantee you. Oh, there you go, Carly Jen. I knew you were a little spite monkey. You're such a weak spite monkey, too. Cloud is so weak. Well, that's probably Queen's Gambit, actually, or one of those other spite monkeys. I don't know. No, but you did. You were talking about elections. So see, you're never going to wake me up unless your words mean things. Your words don't mean anything because you were talking about elections. You did say that. You said exactly what I already quoted you as saying. You said they want him to win. So were you saying they helped him to win or they just want him to win, but they don't intervene? Are you saying these New World Order elites don't intervene or they do intervene? Which is it? Richard, answer the question. Okay, Legend Fall, I'm sorry. You have stepped back from your initial claims, and I acknowledge that. You're just claiming that's evidence that it's suspicious. But as I said, you're still not doing a good job of managing your claims because that evidence is very suspicious. When you see that document, you should go, oh, fuck. This is worthless. It's like that lady who, that's exactly what I did with the lady's work who was saying that the virus was man-made. So even though I concluded it was most likely an accidental lab release, in the process of making that calculation, in the middle of it, what did I do? I shat on as hard as I could that lady who initially made the big claims about it being lab made. Because as soon as I looked at her work, it was obvious she had an agenda. She was not actually trying to determine what was correct. Her evidence was shit. And that's what I'm talking about. That's why it's so dangerous. People with agendas, they come in, they provide shit evidence. If I had stopped right there, I would have concluded, oh, fuck, of course it's natural made. This stupid bitch, she's got no idea what she's talking about. It's dangerous to believe shit like that. Because, but nevertheless, note, she turned out probably to be right. And she did more harm to her cause than good by not thinking properly, not arguing properly. She rendered everything she said on the topic, she rendered her position on the topic less likely to be accepted by people by arguing it badly, by having an agenda, by thinking that she knew what the answer was first and then trying to prove it, instead of concluding the answer after she had done the research. Richard Bowen, not only can you not give me every answer, thus far you haven't given me any answer. Whereas I've addressed everything you've said, you've ignored everything I've said. Because you are apparently TI polar. So what I would discover is a bunch of NI bullshit. Remember, if you choose the parts of the narrative you tell, you can always construct a very suggestive NI story for just about anything. Good thinkers know this. You, however, are not just a bad thinker, but you're getting pretty close to being a bad person. Richard Bowen, you're done. Because I respond to you, but you don't respond to me. Fucking TI polar people are the devil, It's like they really piss me off. If you can't think at all, don't talk about politics. You got no business talking about politics if you can't think properly. Politics require you to be rigorous in your thinking, not make claims you can't substantiate. If you have a claim and you're telling other people to go do some research, you have not substantiated any claim, and you can shove your fucking suggestion that they go do research up your fucking ass. Your job is to prove your point, not make other people prove your point for you, not make other people do your work for you. Don't be a fucking pussy, If you're going to make a claim, substantiate it. How New World Order fucking dominant elites controlling everything, and I run amok bullshit. People's interests don't align that clearly along socioeconomic class or economic interest. I mean, all you need to know there's no New World Order or people, it used to be the big corporate entities and they were trying to whatever, and it's all about profit, Eric. They'll do whatever's most profitable for them. And yet then COVID happens. All of a sudden you don't hear that argument anymore because COVID was profitable for like almost nobody. So if it really is a dominant elites, then one or two of those dominant elites benefited and the rest of them totally lost a lot of money. Yeah, I banned him. Probably it could be a troll. I mean, the thing is, I used to think that all ESFPs were trolls, but I've come to recognize the fact that they really are that awful. You know, make you a mod so you can get rid of COVID. Most billionaires have become richer during the lockdown. Okay, so then are we defining the dominant elite as billionaires? I mean, we we can point to the fact that people with wealth are better able to sustain wealth across lean times. But if you're talking about corporations, there are very, very few corporate entities that would say 2020 was a good year for them. Right. Why releasing a virus would be any benefit to anybody is not clear. Now, the argument I've heard from Leaf Tremor is basically, well, Bill Gates benefits because he wants to do this or something. Well, I mean, again, Vex says I was friends with an ESFP for like 5 years, and I regret to say it was the worst friendship I've ever had. I mean, it's like, look, the thing is, I really don't want to be somebody who shits on a certain type or whatever. The problem with typology is this: it's right. So it's like there really is a group of people who all act the same in an appallingly awful way, from my perspective. And that group of people matches up exactly with the group of people that we also call ESFPs or ENFPs, depends. You know, it's like the TI polar is the key thing, though. It's you can really see the clashes here between TI and TI polar when people come in. And for a long time, I thought these people must be trolling. Nope, they really can't do TI at all. They really don't get it at all. It's hard to reconcile that it's not their fault. I know. It seems like they've got to be purposefully doing this. They've got to be purposefully trying to be non-communicatively effective, purposefully trying to muddle the truth and answer nothing and ignore me. And it's like, no, they're just stuck. They're a bird that is stuck between in a thin layer of air between ice and water. Here in talking about tennis people, this is an environment where they are unable to survive, and so they just thrash about in their death throes, you know, because it's expected that people make meaningful distinctions. They have meaningful positions on things, that they sustain them with meaningful arguments. And ESFPs expect to sort of gesture at intuition and say, now let me tell you all about it. And they don't know anything. It's like you should be out there teaching yoga where you don't have to use any words. not trying to do things with words. You just can't do it. There's a lot of weird stuff like that, though. That's the thing. If I can find you an example of another billionaire who contradicts themselves in a different way, well, does that mean they got defeated or what? I don't answer restricted numbers. Right. In almost every instance, you can come up with dozens and dozens and dozens of likely explanations. Some of them more plausible than others. But if they're explanations that don't start with evidence first, then they're, in other words, if they're explanations that conclude action has been taken because people have reason to take action, well, everybody has reason to take actions of various sorts. So why cherry pick that one? I know I don't want to demonize a type. I don't want to demonize them. And yet, they keep coming around acting like demons. If you're talking about public policy, it affects us all. And it's important you think well. Or else just don't even think about it. Yeah. I've been compromised by the dominant elite. Oh, yeah, he is. He's an ESFP. ESFPs are good enough at real-time shit to sort of fool me into thinking they're ENFJs, maybe. So especially if they sort of lead me into making a serious effort to lead me there. And avoid the TI questions for as much as they can. So, like, Prince was really thorny about the TI questions, aka Ashadeep. Well, that should have been a stronger indication he was TI polar, but instead, I let my FE move me away from that data point. So, like, there's a couple people that I think are ESFPs that I initially typed as ENFJs. But I think they fooled me kind of. Yeah, exactly. Zaylen Black points out a good thing. If population reduction was the reason for the virus, they chose a terrible virus. It's got a really, really low fatality rate. Under 1%. And vastly under that if you calculate it meaningfully. Well, see, Leaf Trimmer, I don't need to make that distinction. I don't doubt that Richard Moan was serious in what he was saying. The problem is only one of us was talking to the other person. He wasn't talking with me. He was saying things to me, but he wasn't responding to anything I said. So at that point, he's just here to make me mad. Now, I used to think the fact that they're not responding to anything I said means they're trolling. No, they don't get that concept that words, that you resolve a status regarding words. So, like, well, they did a bad job of that too, Legends Fall. They did a terrible job of it. I mean, I think we're at like 22,000 deaths in California or something. Which, I mean, 400,000 people die a year in the state. I mean, look, the thing is, I think they are genuine, but what happens is we each get genuinely more outraged. Me appropriately, because they're trying to play basketball on my tennis court, and them inappropriately because I won't let them change the tennis court to a basketball court. You know, and then they go and they try to, like, well, you saw what happened with the Discord server, right? When you get people who are TI polar involved, they believe that the process of drawing conclusions about things that are universal is fundamentally wrong, that it invalidates the individual in some sense. Of course, again, context is key. We're talking about public policy. I'm right. If we're talking about relationships, they're right, but they think they're right in both circumstances. And they don't understand. And they can't understand. I can't teach them. They won't learn. Cloud's actually pretty cool. You spend most of my time on Discord nowadays. Well, I'm sure he's most cool when there's no ENTP around or ESTP around. I don't doubt that Cloud can get along well with people who are willing to let him be the one holding court and don't challenge him on shit. I never tried teaching TI Polar how to do logic proofs that I can specifically recall, but I know that that I've had students who just couldn't do logic before at all. I taught logic. That's the funny thing is hospitalization and death occur mainly among high-risk groups. Worldwide, these annual epidemics are estimated to result in about 3 to 5 million cases of severe illnesses and about 290,000 to 650,000 respiratory deaths. What's that for, a flu or something? Well, it's actually not a strain of the influenza virus. It's a strain of coronavirus. But yeah, so people will say, well, COVID's caused more deaths than that. It's caused more than 650,000 deaths, substantially more. Well, I don't have a lot of faith that most of those COVID deaths are properly attributed to COVID per se. The COVID is a contributing factor, maybe, but yeah, TI correlates with TINE, especially correlates with geometry. Like, we like geometry and we don't like the rest of math. I mean, it's just like that guy on Facebook the other day said, I have terrible news. I lost my father to COVID. The doctor said it was a mild case and he was well on his way to recovering, and then came the heart failure. I mean, you didn't lose your father to COVID, you lost your father to a heart attack. And it's that kind of stupidity that causes the world to fall apart. Everything gets everything here gets fighty, things get fighty. And the thing is, I want those fights to be reasonable fights, like, I want the person who wants to argue with me to hear what I'm saying and respond to it. I'm hearing what they're saying and responding to it. So, it's like, I don't want to just get mad all the time. And it easily makes me mad. Ideally, I don't even want to spar with them, Freddie Forgiato. I would like to have good conversations about things, but I do have the pedant's habit of saying, well, sort of, but actually it's meow meow. It's like I do have a habit of doing that. And obviously, I like to do this a lot because I'm holding court, right? It's like, here I am, the center of attention, talking. But what I really want is just people to be responsive to what I actually say, not just avoid it. I hate that. I hate it when people don't answer my questions, avoid shit. The cloud announced, renounced, and then re-renounced Christianity many, many times. He severely disliked his narcissism and never put, hello, weaklings. He called himself king and God. Pathetic. Well, I mean, I thought that stuff was silly too, but it didn't really bother me. But what bothered me was never making any progress. I'm not interested in running for local office. The reason I'm running for president is because I feel like it's a duty. It's a duty born of a couple of realities. I don't see anybody else from the understanding or talking about politics correctly from my understanding of the word, Number two, I don't see the country being run very well, disappointingly badly at times. Number three, I see the country being extremely polarized and desperately in need of an alternative to the current divisive narratives that drive Americans into two camps that hate each other instead of different factions of the same team, The thing is, my credibility comes from the fact that, as far as I can tell, I'm genuinely the most qualified person to be president. It's all the credibility I need for my own self. And you're saying credibility for other people. Well, I have a duty to run for president and to do so as successfully as I can. But I am ultimately relying on the superiority of my message to get me elected. That what I'm saying is fundamentally superior to what any other person trying to get elected for president is saying. That I am a person who conveys successfully, in the proper context, dressed properly or whatnot, this reality pretty clearly. And the thing is, Freddie Forgiato, you're right. Cloud will live on for eternity, but he's not the first and won't be the last. He's not that special. So, both Chloe and Courtney had much more dramatic exits than Cloud did as ESFPs. Courtney actually damaged the channel somewhat, and And so did Chloe did a shit ton of damage. Chloe killed the Raw channel, losing me thousands of hours of footage. Freaking Courtney deleted videos from the channel when I foolishly made her a manager or something, like whatever it's called. And we've had other ESFPs as well. Yeah, well, she got the Raw channel. The first, I had two Raw channels, Raw channel 1 and 2. 2 was not actively uploading at the time, but when YouTube changed its policies and stuff, we had been on Chloe. That channel had already gotten a bunch of copyright shit because Chloe kept dumping copyrighted videos into it. And so, she is persona non grata. In fact, I just went to Facebook to see that other lady's message, and I saw there's message requests from including Chloe, even though I made it abundantly clear that she is persona non grata, which means it very rarely happens. But I literally, she is one of the people who's done me so wrong that I literally refuse to speak to her or acknowledge her existence to her at all. Anyway, so Cloud's not that impressive as an ESFP, really, as far as wreckage creation goes. But Cloud was a much more successful ESFP than most. In other words, was able to survive in this non-conducive ecosystem longer than most. So the thing is, would I say he was here longer than Courtney was? No, not really. About the same amount of time, probably. Longer than Chloe? Definitely not. Chloe was here longer. Yeah, that would be funny. Just anytime an ESFP comes in, we just have to copy and paste whatever they say. It all sounds like gobbledygook. Anyway, I'm going to bed. I'm tired. Good night, everybody. At the moment, I mean, Cloud's brought up here because a lot of people who are coming in here as might very well be Cloud. So that's why he's still kind of an active topic of conversation. And he's sort of the representative of the ESFP problem, which is, you call purely destructive discourse, no constructive discourse. And it is a society-wide problem. Like the Courtney's way back. Courtney was back around the time of the cross-country trip. Eric, was Trump an overall fitting, desirable president for the U.S. or not? No, I've already given plenty of reasoning about it earlier in the stream. You just weren't here. We already talked about that. But that's fine. That's a good question anyway. I mean, I gotta go. Good night. It gives me a headache.